believe it or not, the post office finally came through for me. Yeah, we got a head gasket here. While I've got this thing torn this far down, I'm going to go ahead and pull that radiator off of there. I'm going to flush it, and then I've got to clean that. I think that was part of the issue of this thing getting a little warm. She's plugged up, partially plugged. So I'll clean that up, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to clean up the cylinder head first. My buddy Arnie, who is a trained machinist, he's got a 18-inch machinist straight edge in his hoard over in his shop. So he's graciously loaning that to me. We're gonna, after I get this all cleaned up, we'll put the straight edge on it, do a light check, and then probably use feeler gauges and just make sure that this is reasonably flat. Then we're going to come over here and clean up the block. I'll do a four-man's valve job with a whizzy wheel on my little die grinder with a Rolock Scotch-Brite type of disc in it. Not something that's going to cut and grind metal, but knock carbon off and shine things up. Yeah, and then I'll probably get some Permatex copper coat, spray that new head gasket both sides, and we'll start putting it back together. Boy, that old gasket is stuck on there. I think I mentioned previous videos. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of good comments, from viewers, subscribers. The ongoing, is the block cracked or is it the blown head gasket? Of course, I've been pretty much holding fast to the blown head gasket theory, but I'm not a mechanic. I'm not a trained automotive mechanic. I'm a tin bender. I'm a sheet metal mechanic. I got the certificate, both the commercial, industrial, and marine, but I'm not an automotive mechanic. So I'm just running with things I've learned over the years and hanging around with all my mechanic buddies. But as far as being a no kidding real mechanic, I'm not the guy. I had to break out the big guns here. My little putty knife wasn't quite cutting it. As you can see, looking in all four cylinders, a lot of carbon. This old girl is quite the oil burner. A couple years ago, I was driving this old 8N in the Huachuca City Christmas parade. Right behind me was my buddy Daryl Dwyer. And Daryl's got this gorgeous ground up restored Ford 8N. It's got the Funk Brothers flathead V8 conversion in it. Man, it just sounds wicked. You've seen it on previous videos, where Power from the Past has done events. So anyway, Daryl was behind me the whole parade. And when we got back to the staging area to load up after the parade was over, Daryl walked up to me and he goes, "You're a bit smoky there, Matt." He was breathing all that oil smoke from this old 8N through all 3 miles of the parade. So I'm curious. You're doing a boring, mundane job like this. Does your mind ever harken back to the day, to the boring, mundane jobs your old man used to give you? We're always on the beautiful summer days when your buddies were all at the lake or down fishing and whatever. I'm just curious. Let me know in the comments. One of my boring, mundane tasks as a kid was straightening rusty nails and sorting them into cans. I don't think I ever saw my dad buy a brand new nail in my entire lifetime when I was a kid growing up. When he passed away back in 2004, my brother and I were in the garage, sorting things out and cleaning things up and, figuring out which memento from our childhoods we were going to take home, and so on and so forth. And darn if I didn't come across a couple of those cans of rusty nails. Of course, my dad was a child of the Great Depression, never threw anything away. And something tells me we're heading for those days again. I don't like the thought of that, but you all see where the world's going. I've done all the polishing and porting I'm going to do on this old head. Before I took the whizzy wheel to it, I took it outside and stuffed the hose into the water jacket port there, and flushed this water jacket and the head out really good, get all the junk out of it from cleaning gaskets off and stuff, and then brought it back in here and blew it all off with compressed air, and then went at it with the whizzy wheel. This head really needs to be resurfaced. There's a lot of pitting. This is the area I suspect was leaking by, allowing oil mist from all the oil burning into the cooling jacket, because you can see a lot of pitting here. There's a line running right into number 1. So she's going to get a real generous coating of copper coat on both sides of the head gasket. That should be enough to fill in all these pits. And you know, I can get a brand new head for this thing. It's a couple $100, $250 on Steiner tractor parts. But I'm not doing that. I just want to get this functional again. I mean, the whole thing needs a rebuild, to be honest. And so I'm not going to monkey around right now getting the head resurfaced and all that. I'll just goop it up good and put it back together, torque it to the head bolt torque specs are 65 to 70 foot-pounds. I'll go the full 70 just to crank her down good and let the old copper coat ooze into all the pitting, and that should be enough to seal it off. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, you know. But for now, that's all I'm doing. So now it's time to go clean up the block, start putting this back together. A number of you commented in the last video about, hey Matt, do a basic hone, you know, put some new rings in it and all that kind of stuff. I'm in 100% agreement with you guys. This thing needs a complete rebuild. Bottom end, I think, is pretty good because the oil pressure is decent. But yeah, it needs a valve lap. It needs everything. Not arguing with you, any of you, on that whatsoever. However, the timing is just wrong for me right now. I just need to get this sealed up and back up and running, and then probably at a future date, with Larry's permission, I'll probably overhaul this thing. But if I get into that, number one, you can't just drop the pan on this Ford. The pan is part of the structural member that holds the front end together. You know, I'd have to pull the front end off, disconnect the radius arms, radius rods, and all of that, separate the tractor, you know, which is, it's kind of involved. And that gets into that issue I was concerned about in the first video of opening Pandora's box. As soon as you start disassembling more things, you start finding more things wrong, and before you know it, you're into this thing. The hydraulics are clapped out. This thing chatters really bad just trying to lift the back blade, you know. So the parts in the lid need to be redone. The hydraulic pump needs to be replaced. I mean, the whole thing just needs to be stripped down to parade rest and rebuilt. I just can't take that on right now because, number one, the time and money are going to get invested in my bucket list tractor. That's been languishing way too long. I am prioritizing that. I am going to work on that. I also have a couple of major home improvement projects in the queue that are outside the purview of the channel, but I'm committed to those projects, for the wife. And so I just can't invest the time and money in this right now. I just got to get this leaking oil into the cooling system problem sealed up as best I can and put this thing back in service, because I've got weeds growing everywhere. I got to get the bush hog on it and do some mowing. And yeah, so that's why. I don't disagree with any of you at all about what this thing needs. But I just wanted to clue you in on why I'm not addressing that right now. So, but I thank you for your comments and concerns. They're all good suggestions. They're all good ideas, and they all need to be done. It's just the timing is wrong right now for me. Let's check out this new head gasket. Well, come on. Gotta be smarter than the packaging. I don't know. Looks like that got creased. Great. Let's see. Well, we may be okay. Good Lord. It had a backing taped to it. All right. Let me get the rest of this undone. National Sealed Power. There is not a country of origin marked on it anywhere. So who knows if it's made in China. I paid $12.99 for the gasket, so I'm assuming foreign manufactured. But I mean, it looks okay. Looks like it's an exact fit. We have a couple extra holes up here in the gasket that aren't in the head. But this is for the 9N, 2N, and 8N. And since I have not had a head off of any of those, the 2Ns and the 9Ns, this may be universal. Based on the witness marks on the block, that's exactly the same as the old gasket. And everything, number of holes, all of that seemed to match up just fine. So I'm going with it. So, like I said, I'm a tin bender. I'm no machinist, but I'm doing some basic clearance checking with the tools I have, which are going to be close enough for this old Ford. Took my little level, laid it across the domes of the pistons, and by the way, those aren't stock pistons. I believe the original ones were flat. These are bored 30 over. I'm not sure why people do that, because this is a sleeved engine. I checked on Steiner. I can get a complete rebuild kit for $279, including new pistons, factory bore, new sleeves, new wrist pins, gasket set, bearings, a whole 9 yards. So I'm not sure why somebody would choose to bore out a sleeve when you can just as well take them out and, you know. Anyway, not going to speculate any farther than that. Oh, and you can tell I've whizzy-wheeled all of this, cleaned it off. Anyway, so I measured using my little engineer scale and just laid a level across the pistons at top dead center here, the distance to the block. And I've got 7/32, and then measured with the straight edge across the head 9/32. So I got about 60 thousandths of play there. You know, if they could take a few thousandths off that head in a machine shop, there's still a little bit of clearance there. I also laid a straight edge across here, drug it across, did a light check, had light in a few places, checked it with a feeder gauge, nothing over 2 thousandths of an inch, and so there's plenty of squish in the new gasket that will make that up, along with the copper coat. I had a good buddy of mine from Power in the Past was here yesterday. He's a trained mechanic, and he says, yeah, you got enough squish factor in the head gasket, should be good to go. So yeah, anyway, just a little tech tip from a tin bender. Check your clearances. You know, a lot of guys just take that head down to the machine shop and hey, say, mill that thing down a little bit, you know, and gosh, if they take 65 thousandths off of it, guess what? You're going to have a crash and burn, because by the time you cinch that down and squish the gasket in there, you don't have any clearance left. So just keep that in mind when you're tearing into this old stuff. Measure those clearances. Now, if these were flat top pistons, wouldn't be an issue at all, but since these are domed, you got to check those clearances. As suspected, I had a lot of oil in and around the intake valves, on the stems, in the seat, everywhere. Oil, liquid oil. So that tells me the valve guides are worn, maybe the valve stems, most likely the guides. So oil's coming up through the intake. Also, we've got really worn rings. So a lot of oil coming in there, coupled with a compromised head gasket right here. Number 2 had a lot of oil. Head gasket compromised right here. There's water jacket in the block right there. So that's where my oil, I'm pretty convinced that's where my oil in the cooling system is coming from. And remember, we're pushing about 25 psi oil pressure and just about 0 psi water pressure, because this isn't a pressurized cooling system. So if you've got an old N-Series Ford tractor and you're getting oil in the cooling system, you know, see it at the top of the radiator, there's probably a pretty good bet. If you've got worn valve guides or worn piston rings, or a combination of both, and a compromised head gasket, and that's how your oil's getting in the cooling system. That's my speculation anyway. So yeah, there you go. So I've got to make a run to town tomorrow. It's Romeo's Day, retired old men eating out, meet up with some of my old buddies from Power from the Past. And I've got to pick up a can of copper coat, Permatex copper coat head gasket spray, which is more expensive than the head gasket I bought. So between the new head gasket and that, I'm hoping I can seal this thing up and keep oil out of the cooling system. Then sometime in the future, after I get caught up on other projects like the Farm All H I mentioned earlier, the Camelback drill press, I got a story to tell you in a minute. We're probably going to revisit this Ford. I need to talk to Larry, he owns it. But the engine definitely needs to be rebuilt. Transmission seems to be okay, and the clutch, hydraulics are clapped out. All the seals in this thing are shot. It's leaking everywhere. The steering box is loose. Everything in the steering and front end is loose. I got differential oil coming out the ends of both axles, so all the seals, brakes, everything's bad. And of course, anything electric on it is bad too. So sometime in the future, we'll revisit this Ford and probably at least do a rebuild on the engine. We'll see. I don't have a crystal ball, can't predict the future, who knows. But anyway, I'm babbling here. So yesterday I was invited to go along on a field trip. Some select members from my tractor club, Power from the Past. This was really cool. Unfortunately, I couldn't film any of it for privacy reasons. And things going on with the owner of this property, we got to tour. There was a fella who was a machinist, had a machine shop, passed away. And all of the machinery in his machine shop originally came out of a historic mine here in southeast Arizona. We're talking big stuff. Patent dates on the Camelback drill press, similar to mine. It was a Cincinnati and about a foot taller. 1906. There was a lathe in there. Gosh, it was every bit of 12 feet long. Huge thing. I don't know what the swing on it was, but we're talking chucks like this. Bins and bins and bins, all labeled and marked, of Morse taper drill bits, all different sizes, all organized. Another Camelback drill press. There was just machinery in this thing like you wouldn't believe. There must have been a workbench in there that must have weighed every bit of 5,000 pounds with a giant reed vise on the end of it. I think it was an 8-inch reed vise. All of it line shaft, overhead line shaft. There was ancient 3-phase electric motors running and all. All this stuff is operational. It needs to be cleaned up, but it was all operational. Well, the individual that owns all of it had purchased the property, I believe, from the daughter of the deceased fella that ran the whole thing. And I've driven by this place many times over the years, and at one time building hot rods and rat rods in there is a really cool old 52 or 53 Chevy panel truck body and chassis sitting out front. Top's been cut off, so I think somebody was going to rat rod that. Well, it's just sitting there. Stuff all over the property too. Sheds with vintage tools and car parts, Model A stuff. Brand new Chevrolet stove bolt 6 intake and exhaust manifold. Brand new. Freshly, never been bolted up. Just all kinds of cool stuff. So the deal was she wants to sell the whole property or have an auction company come in and auction off all this equipment, machinery. She's rethinking that because, it's really a small fishbowl of people you're targeting for that ancient kind of equipment. And I expressed to her, my fear was, well, you have an auction or a big estate sale or something like that, and you advertise it, the scrappers are going to come in with their cutting torches, and they're going to buy it from you for scrap price, and they're going to cut it up right there and haul it off, which would be a crying shame. So it appears, it was really unclear to me, but our club president knows more. I think it was the equipment and machinery and any kind of ag-related farm stuff entering the property was being offered to our club first because we're historic and a non-profit, and our gig is gathering this stuff up and refurbishing it and displaying it for the public, kind of a museum and educational type of thing. There may be an option if the club can't or won't act on it for whatever reason, that individual members may be offered a chance at some of this equipment. That's still up in the air. I don't know. If that happens, guess who's going back? There's some cool things in there. So anyway, I'll keep you posted on that and see where it goes. But for now, I'm going to stop this video here because, we're up around 18, 19 minutes, and so I'm trying to limit the length of these things. Next video, we're putting this Ford all back together, put some coolant in it, fire it up, run it, work it, and then retorque the head bolts flush the cooling system, put fresh antifreeze in it, and see how long I get out of it. Welcome new subscribers. If you're new to the channel, thanks for joining us. Hope you're enjoying the content, and as always, my existing subscribers, thanks for sticking around. And we'll see you real soon on the next one. Bye now, everybody. Yes, your turn is coming. It's okay.